This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means? It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Black Friday week starting November 21st.
This episode is brought to you by Peacock and the new original docuseries, Making Manson. In 1969, Charles Manson and his followers committed 7 brutal murders in Los Angeles that would make him infamous. Now, with access to over 100 hours of phone recordings between an incarcerated Manson and his closest confidant, a new story will unfold with shocking revelations from the man himself. Making Manson is streaming now only on Peacock.
If you're not already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe on Apple, Patreon, or search The Murder Diaries ad-free on Spotify to listen ad-free and get access to our subscriber-only journal entry episodes. You don't want to miss them. Welcome back to The Murder Diaries. I'm Paige.
And I'm Natalie.
In March of 1996, 25-year-old Alicia Showalter Reynolds was a no-show for a shopping date with her mom at a mall in Virginia. Hours passed, and Alicia never showed. Her abandoned vehicle was found on the shoulder of Route 29 in Virginia, and her remains were found a few miles away just 2 months later. The news of Alicia's murder traveled quickly, bringing forth witnesses who recalled seeing her pulled over on Route 29 with her car hood up, speaking with a man. More than 20 women came forward reporting interactions with a similar man on or near Route 29 in Virginia, bringing investigators to wonder if Alicia had been the victim of a serial killer. This is her story.
Used to think it's in my head, but I'm walking with the dead.
Alicia Faye Showalter was born on August 5th, 1970 in Harrisonburg City, Virginia, to Harley and Sadie Showalter. Alicia had a twin brother named Patrick, who was often referred to as her younger brother. I guess you could say he was a younger sibling, but only by 10 minutes. 5 years later, the twins gained a younger sister named Barbara. Alicia graduated from Harrisonburg High School in 1988 before getting her undergraduate degree at Goshen College, majoring in biology and chemistry. On Goshen College's website today, they offer a scholarship in Alicia's memory, elaborating on what a dedicated, fun-loving, and generous student she was. Biology professor Jonathan Roth said she exemplified the spirit of what we do at our best at GC. He recalled her strong work ethic in the classroom, and he also remembered her gleeful abandon when another student splashed her as they waded in a shallow flat at Goshen College's marine biology facility in Florida. A mock battle ensued with Alicia as a major player, heaving fistfuls of algae at others. Besides her studies, she also continued her interests in music by playing the oboe in the college orchestra. She spent a 13-week study service term in the Dominican Republic. After graduation from Goshen in 1992, Alicia accepted an offer into a graduate program at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. While living in Baltimore, Alicia met Mark Williams Reynolds in May of 1993. On New Year's Eve of 1994, Alicia and Mark married at her home church of Parkview Mennonite in Harrisonburg. On the scholarship dedication page on Goshen's website, it's written, "She was a beautiful person, and she also had beauty of character." Friends recalled an unusual combination of compassion, sensitivity, and calm combined with an intensely competitive, determined pursuit of excellence. These qualities permeated her life from friendships to family, from sports to studies. Make no mistake, though, this dedicated student also had another side, a side that took great delight in the enjoyable aspects of life. Friends recall her unique giggle, her dancing in the rain, her radiant love for her husband, Mark. At this point, it should come as no shock that Alicia worked hard and had aspirations of diving even further into scientific research and even teaching college students. While at Johns Hopkins, in her 4th year as a doctoral student, Alicia was in the middle of developing a vaccine against schistosomiasis, a widespread parasitic disease that affected millions of people, especially children. She and Mark even made plans to travel to Africa where she could help administer the vaccine and he could work as a dentist. Her father, Harley, told WHSV News that his daughter was very dedicated to her research and her work as a scientist. Quote, "She was very good at research and she was very committed and focused. She knew what her challenge was, and she wanted to solve the problem.
Alicia was intent on a career in life spent helping others. She didn't have much longer left before she'd earn her graduate degree in pharmacology, and the plans she had for her life were all geared towards living her life to the fullest and serving those who needed it most. Her high school principal told the Washington Post that Alicia was always smiling and that she cared so much for others, saying she was going to have a very successful life. She left this community with purpose in mind.
On Saturday, March 2nd, 1996, then 25-year-old Alicia told her husband Mark goodbye and got into her white Mercury Tracer. She left their home in Baltimore around 7:30 a.m. to drive the 150 miles to Charlottesville, Virginia. She was meeting her mom at the mall in Fashion Square so they could shop for dresses for her twin brother's wedding, which was only a few months away. She left early in order to give herself plenty of time to meet her mom by 10:30. Sadie, Alicia's mother, sat in the parking lot of the Charlottesville Mall for quite some time, hoping that Alicia had just hit some traffic. After about an hour and a half, she called her son-in-law to see if he knew where Alicia was. He said that she'd left around 7:30 and that perhaps she'd been delayed by the heavy fog in the area. Hoping that was the case, Sadie continued to wait for her daughter to arrive. She later told WHSV News, "How long I sat there and just, thinking to myself, is that her car? Is that her car?" Finally, I just said, I think about 2 p.m., we were going to meet at 10:30. I said, okay, she's not coming. Sadie called Mark again and told him that Alicia still hadn't arrived. It's unclear exactly what time he did so, but Mark contacted law enforcement to file a missing persons report. Not long after, someone in the family was contacted and told that Alicia's credit card had been found on a sidewalk in Culpeper, Virginia. Around 6 p.m., a state trooper located a white Mercury Tracer, just like Alicia's, parked on the southbound shoulder of U.S. Route 29. It was about 50 miles northeast of Charlottesville in Culpeper, Virginia, the same city that they had found her credit card in. There was a white napkin tucked underneath the windshield wiper, which can be an indicator that someone had left their car due to mechanical problems. It was soon determined to be Alicia's vehicle. However, an inspection showed that there was nothing wrong with the vehicle. Sadie confirmed that it sounded like her daughter to leave something like that white napkin underneath the windshield to indicate that she hadn't just abandoned it. This even temporarily made Alicia's loved ones feel a bit better. Alicia may have just broken down and gotten a ride to a nearby gas station and had been unable to get in touch with her or Mark. Inside Alicia's car, police found a piece of paper with Sadie's cell phone number written on it. Though many people still didn't have cell phones in 1996, Sadie had recently bought one. Alicia asked for her mother's cell phone number so she could write it down and have it with her for the drive, just in case there was an emergency. Law enforcement jumped into action once they realized that Alicia truly was missing. The next day, Sunday, March 3rd, police set up roadblocks along Route 29, stopping all vehicles in hope of finding information about Alicia. Several witnesses were called having seen her on the side of the road talking to a man in a dark-colored pickup truck while stopped on the side of the road. They said that the man was Caucasian, in his late 30s or early 40s, and was somewhere between 5'10" and 6 feet tall. He was reported to have a medium build and light to medium brown hair. At least 3 of these witnesses reported that it looked like Alicia was having car trouble. She had the hood of her vehicle up, and it looked like the man was helping her. Patrick, Alicia's twin, was living in Tennessee at the time and was just a few weeks away from graduating from medical school. He'd spent the afternoon studying before heading to dinner with his fiance's family. When he returned home that night, he was notified that his sister was missing and that she hadn't been seen for over 12 hours. Patrick was initially skeptical. To him, Alicia couldn't be missing. There had to be some kind of mistake. He later told the U.S. Sun there was that initial disbelief, like, what do you mean she's missing? How could this possibly be? And then your mind goes to all the worst things that could happen. And quite honestly, to me, death was not the worst thing that could happen to her.
Investigators were encouraged by the multiple eyewitness accounts. However, they had no idea what they were actually going to discover about this mystery man over the next few days.
When you think about a successful business, like Only Murders in the Building star Selena Gomez's Rare Beauty, sure, you think about an in-demand product that's high quality, that has scary good marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually a business behind the business, making selling and buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet and the not-so-secret secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%. This means way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So if you want to grow your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling and strolling. On the web, of course. In your store, in your feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret that the businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Rare Beauty uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/murderdiaries, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/murderdiaries to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/murderdiaries. As news reports and word spread of Alicia's disappearance, as well as the multiple reports of her last being seen on the side of the road, seemingly with car trouble and being helped by a man, tips started flooding into the police. Over 20 women came forward to law enforcement with reports that they'd had run-ins with a man trying to get them to pull over in their vehicles along Route 29 or nearby. The stories differed slightly, but all said that the man drove a dark-colored pickup truck. Some reported seeing a green tarp and a toolbox in the bed of his truck. Most of the stories described a man who would repeatedly flash his lights behind them, then pull up next to them and gestured for them to roll down their window. He'd yell that something was wrong with their car or that he could see sparks coming from their car and that they should pull over. Many of these women did pull over. We have to remember that this is a time where not a lot of people had cell phones, especially the kind that we have today. Because of that, these women were concerned about driving too far if something was wrong with their vehicle. And why would they want to pass up the chance when somebody's literally right there available to help them? Once they'd pull over, the man would climb under the vehicle, appearing to do a quick inspection. He'd then tell the driver that he'd found a problem and that they definitely shouldn't continue driving. Then the man would offer them a ride to the nearest payphone or gas station. There were at least 6 women who'd pulled over, gotten in that man's vehicle, and had him drop them off at a nearby payphone without any issue. Some said that he introduced himself as Larry Breeden. Though these women reported that the man was polite and friendly, and technically he did do what he offered to do, some of them still got a strange feeling from him. One said that though his assessment of her vehicle made her very anxious to drive it home, she declined his offer for a ride multiple times. Eventually, at his continued insistence, she agreed to let him give her a ride, and thankfully, she made it home safely. There were several women who did not pull over when instructed by a man in the pickup, and they saw someone who was not friendly or polite. He'd continue screaming at them, pounding on his steering wheel, cursing and gesturing at them before driving off. A 23-year-old student from Culpeper said that on February 22nd, she was flagged down by a strange man in a dark-colored truck on the side of Route 29. She pulled over and he told her that he'd seen sparks coming out from her vehicle's transmission. She later told the Washington Post that he was very nice about it. He made me scared to drive my car and I finally agreed to go with him. He ended up dropping off the woman with no issues. She said that she had a mechanic inspect her vehicle afterwards and he found nothing wrong with it. The woman, who did not want to be identified for fear of the man finding her again, called police after hearing about Alicia's disappearance. Another woman reported an encounter with the same man that ended very differently. Just 1 week before Alicia disappeared and 3 days after the Culpeper woman's experience, this young woman was driving down Route 234 near Manassas, heading to Quantico, Virginia. This was early in the evening, but it was already dark outside. A car pulled up behind her, flashing their lights. She pulled over because she thought it might have been somebody she knew. The woman watched as a man approached her vehicle in the rearview mirror. He was quiet when he spoke, apologizing for scaring her by flashing his lights. He said that he'd noticed sparks coming from her car while she was driving, like the other women reported. The man offered her a ride to the nearby gas station. She didn't feel threatened by the man and felt comfortable accepting the ride. Once she got into his vehicle, his behavior changed. The woman said that he'd slow down and pull off the road, then back onto the road. She asked the man about it, and he said that someone had been behind them with their high beams on and it was difficult to see. When he did it again, he said that the frost on his windshield was making it difficult to see. He pulled off, then back onto the road for a third time, and the woman told him that he could just drop her off at the closest gas station. It was at this point that the man became aggressive. She told police that he grabbed her head and pushed it into his lap, yelling at her to hand over her purse. The two continued fighting as he tried to push her out the car door while she was trying to escape. During the attack, the woman got tangled in her seatbelt strap, which caused her to be dragged outside of the vehicle. She was able to free herself and roll out of the vehicle, breaking her ankle in the process. The man sped off and disappeared. Investigators felt that this man could very well likely be involved in Alicia's disappearance. Police had received over 550 tips from motorists who reported having seen the man's truck. They investigated everyone named Larry Breeden, but they were all dead ends. Officials assumed the name was an alias. Women who lived in the area and regularly traveled along Route 29 were petrified after learning about the multiple reports of this man targeting women driving. An 18-year-old market manager who knew Route 29 very well told the Washington Post that it was so scary because it could have been her saying, "I would have stopped if he flagged me over. I'm constantly paranoid now. If he can take someone in broad daylight, then this isn't the last we've heard of him."
Investigators began wondering if all of the encounters leading up to Alicia's disappearance had been practice runs before he actually abducted someone. The community was on high alert, with police planning to put up billboards along Route 29 with Alicia's picture, as well as pulling over any trucks that matched the description of the vehicle last seen parked behind Alicia's. Listen to this. The Environmental Working Group found that 3 out of 4 homes in America have some pretty sketchy stuff in their tap water, which makes total sense because for the last 16 years that I've been with my husband, he's been joking that I'm like the little girl from Signs. Remember that movie? Because I can literally taste the difference between tap water and filtered water. Some would say it's a gift. I call it a curse because no matter where we are, whether it's a restaurant or a friend's place, I just can't bring myself to drink tap water. I'm always on a mission to find the good stuff, and that's why I love my AquaTrue. I can taste the difference it makes, and now my security water bottle that goes with me everywhere is always filled with tasty filtered water. That's why you've got to check out AquaTrue. Their purifiers use a 4-stage reverse osmosis purification process, and get this, their countertop purifiers work with no installation or plumbing. Thank goodness, because we do not need to add anything else to our to-do list these days. The filters remove 15 times more contaminants than ordinary pitcher filters and are specifically designed to combat chemicals like PFAS in your water supply. They have water filters that fit every type of home, from installation-free countertop purifiers, like I just mentioned, to higher capacity under-sink options. They even have a Wi-Fi connected purifier and mineral boost options. Their filters are affordable and long-lasting. There's no changing filters every 2 to 3 months. Their filters last from 6 months to 2 years. Thank goodness. And best of all, you're going to save the environment from tons of plastic, because just one set of filters from their classic purifier makes the equivalent of 4,500 bottles of water. Not to mention, that's less than 3 cents a bottle, so you're saving money while you save the planet. AquaTrue has made such a difference for me, my husband, and our dog Arya. Honestly, we're living in a world where tap water is off the table, and I couldn't be more grateful. It's like we've leveled up in hydration, and I'm here for it. AquaTrue comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, and even makes a great gift. Today, Murder Diaries listeners receive 20% off any AquaTrue purifier. Just go to aquatrue.com, that's AQUATRU.com, and enter the code DIARIES at checkout. That's 20% off any AquaTrue water purifier when you go to aquatrue.com and use promo code DIARIES. That's DIARIES.
The state police, in conjunction with crime analysts from the FBI, created a psychological profile describing how they believe the suspect may be acting, saying, "The man may be acting anxious and fearful. He may be bringing up Reynolds' disappearance in casual conversation or talking about it incessantly. He may have taken annual leave last week. He may have made a sudden change of appearance or may have changed cars suddenly." A spokesman for the state police, Lucy Caldwell, emphasized that the sudden media surrounding the suspect's vehicle could be what gives him away, explaining that if someone recognizes that their colleague always drove the same black truck to work every day and is now driving a Volkswagen, that may be a clue. Another police spokeswoman, this time for the Prince William Police, Kim Chin, said that her department was operating under the assumption that this man knew how to talk to people, telling the press that this guy has something about him or says the right things that make him appear very trustworthy. It's unfortunate that you can't trust strangers, but you can't. Chin went on to say that if your vehicle is sparking or on fire, you should get out of it, but she urged motorists not to get into a vehicle with a stranger. The search for Alicia continued, with her parents and husband holding out hope that she'd been found alive. A $35,000 reward was offered for information regarding her disappearance. There were billboards and flyers all throughout the cities that lined Route 29 and the surrounding areas. Her parents left a candle burning in their home in Harrisonburg, their symbol of hope that Alicia would return home to them. In contrast to their parents, both of Alicia's siblings said that despite still hoping that Alicia was safe, they were quick to believe that their sister wouldn't be returning home to them. Alicia's husband, Mark, showered and shaved every single day, ready just in case his wife came back home. He drove for miles and miles around the area where Alicia disappeared and where her car was found, searching for any sign of her. He kept a bag packed for her, waiting by the door, ready to grab if he got the call that she'd been found in the hospital. It's unclear exactly when, but in addition to Alicia's credit card being found, her parka was located near Route 662 in Madison County, which was about 15 miles away from where she was reportedly last seen. Investigators continued to receive tips regarding Alicia and the mystery man who was reportedly last seen with her, but unfortunately, they didn't seem to answer any questions about her whereabouts. These tips ultimately raised even more questions and suspicions around the man in the dark-colored truck. Though her disappearance hadn't officially been linked with reports of this man, it was widely suspected in the community and law enforcement alike. 2 months after Alicia disappeared, the question of where Alicia was answered. On May 6, 1996, a man who was working outside noticed buzzards circling above the area along a dead-end gravel road. The area was in the town of Lignum and was owned by a Fredericksburg paper company. It was about 10 miles away from where Alicia had last been seen on the shoulder of Route 29. Alicia's family was quickly notified that the remains had been located and were being investigated and sent for autopsy. Despite needing to await the official results from the autopsy, they were all pretty certain that the remains belonged to Alicia. There were no other missing women in the area. As the family waited for answers, Alicia's Uncle Carl told the Washington Post that the emotions were conflicting, saying the parents are disappointed, but they're somewhat relieved that this thing may be coming to some finality. There's still a tad of hope, but realistically, after this much time, they knew this could be the case. The remains, which were decomposed, were reported to be partially covered in tree limbs and branches, as well as some nearby fabric that could have been degraded clothing. Descriptions of jewelry and clothing, including boots, a dress, and rings, found in the nearby area and around the body had been relayed to Alicia's family, which led them either further along to the conclusion that Alicia had been found. Those who lived in the area emphasized to reporters that the dead end that the remains were found by was an extremely remote area. A man who lived nearby told the Washington Post, "It's so secluded. This is a dead-end road. It seems like someone had to know about it." Less than 24 hours later, an autopsy confirmed what everyone had suspected. The remains belonged to Alicia Showalter Reynolds. Unfortunately, her date and time of death were unable to be determined. Alicia's mother, Sadie, told the journalist that despite the heartbreak of knowing her oldest daughter was dead, at least she now knew where she was. Quote, "My prayers were answered yesterday evening. Not the way we wanted, but he did answer. She was the kind of daughter I learned a lot from. I'm really going to miss that." Alicia's twin later told the U.S. Sun that not knowing where his sister was or what had happened to her was torture. He said that's the way we kind of lived until we found her, wondering what kind of state she was in. Was she alive? Was she dead? Is she being abused? How much is she suffering? Those kinds of things just eat away at you constantly. So when her body was found, it was actually a great relief in a way. The investigators now felt even more strongly that the man from the witness accounts and previous attacks was responsible for Alicia's murder. It was noted at the time that the FBI could not find any other similar reports from anywhere else in the country. Prince William Commonwealth's attorney told the Washington Post that it's pretty clear that one and the same person was acting in all these cases. They have the same method, and there was escalating violence. He became more aggressive with these women as he went along.
It was clear that this still unidentified man's behavior had escalated, culminating in Alicia's murder. But it seemed like he disappeared after Alicia was abducted. Investigators pointed out that serial offenders can commonly have periods where they stop committing crimes, especially after a particularly violent episode. They become fearful of being exposed. But once they feel they've gotten away with their crime, they'll eventually return to the same behavior. This led officials to believe that this man would absolutely reoffend. Retired FBI behavioral expert Richard Alt felt certain that the man would return. He'll be back. Whatever fantasy is fueling this guy is still there. This guy is an interesting combination of both the inadequacy you see in most rapists, along with the chutzpah to approach women in broad daylight.
Unfortunately, as years continued to pass, it seemed less and less likely that Alicia's murder was going to be solved. Investigators didn't want to call her case cold, as they were still actively investigating and receiving tips. Her family maintained hope that they would be able to get answers. As the one-year anniversary of Alicia's disappearance came and went, Harley, Alicia's father, told reporters that the family was coping, but still hopeful that the public would be able to help the state police with more information and leads. Mark added that they decided to let the anniversary come and go quietly. The Reynolds and the Showalters realized that not only were they heartbroken by Alicia's death, but the community had changed because of what had happened. A spokeswoman for the Virginia State Police said that Alicia's case was shedding light on something that had been happening for years, but was just now being realized. One of the things that's happening is the Reynolds case raised the public's awareness of how common it is for women to be, if not abducted, hassled or assaulted on the roadside. There were several people who were considered to be connected to Alicia's murder, but ultimately found not to be. All of these persons of interest were initially linked to Alicia based off other abductions or murders that they were suspected or convicted of. Some of Alicia's family have long suspected serial killer Richard Markey Bonnets. Richard abducted and murdered 3 young girls in Virginia, all under the age of 15, in 1996 and 1997. In 2002, Richard abducted a 15-year-old girl who ultimately escaped. Out of much due respect, we'll leave that story for the survivor to tell on their own. Ultimately, after a long pursuit, and as officers closed in on him, Richard shot himself, leaving behind a vehicle full of DNA evidence that connected him to the 3 murders and the abduction. There was no evidence directly connecting Richard to Alicia's murder. However, her family found it strange to think that there was more than one serial killer operating in the same area at one time. In May of 1996, 2 female hikers, 24-year-old Julie and 26-year-old Dolly, were found murdered at their campsite in Virginia's Shenandoah National Park. Their campsite was less than an hour away from where Alicia's remains had been found. Approximately 1 year later, a man named Daryl was arrested for attempting to abduct a bicyclist on the same road where the hikers had been found. Surveillance footage showed him entering the park around the suspected time of the hiker's murder. Daryl was charged with the murders of Julie and Lolly. However, the charges were ultimately dropped when DNA evidence linked the murders to someone else. This, however, didn't stop Daryl's name from being associated with Alicia's murder. In August of 2005, the woman who had been attacked shortly before Alicia's murder in 1996 accused Daryl of being the man who had told her that there was something wrong with her car and then offered her a ride. The woman's credibility was brought into question multiple times during the trial, including the fact that she had previously identified Richard Bonnets to police as her attacker. She had allegedly told investigators different details at different times about the attack. Daryl eventually, after turning down multiple plea offers, accepted an Alford plea, not admitting guilt, but agreeing that the prosecution had enough evidence to convict. He served no time for this plea, and again, there was no concrete evidence linking him to Alicia's murder. In the end, a man named Walter, aka Leo Jackson Sr., was proved to have committed the murders of Julie and Lolly. This was based on forensic evidence after the case was reevaluated by the FBI. He ended up dying in prison in 2018 before he could be brought to justice for the 2 murders. Online sources report that Leo was not officially suspected of being involved in Alicia's murder. However, information is unclear as to why. One suspect who is widely rumored and highly suspected by some of Alicia's family to be behind a murder is a Long Island serial killer, Rex Heuermann. Alicia's brother Patrick has been adamant that he believes Rex to be a serious person of interest in Alicia's murder. You see, Rex's mother was living in Palmyra, Virginia at the time of Alicia's murder, which is only about 50 miles from where her remains were found. As he describes in a deposition for an unrelated case, Rex had traveled to and from Palmyra, Virginia, and New York multiple times. What has also convinced a lot of people that Rex is behind the attacks on Route 29, now commonly referred to as the Route 29 Stalker, is his resemblance to one of the suspect sketches released after Alicia's disappearance. Patrick felt that the resemblance was striking and that if Rex was a bit thinner, he would definitely look extremely similar to the sketches. Barbara, Alicia's sister, pointed out that Rex would have been in his early 30s when Alicia was murdered. She agrees with her brother that his resemblance to the suspect sketch was very compelling. Rex Heuermann is currently facing charges in the murder of 6 women over the span of 3 decades in Long Island. However, there are several other murders being investigated that he might be connected to. A CNN article published in June of 2024 explains that officials are continuing to investigate Rex's possible involvement in many other crimes, including those that may not obviously match his known pattern. Quote, detectives believe, based on offender characteristics of serial killers, there may be more alleged killings according to officials briefed on the investigation. In most of those cases, a serial killer does not start killing in his 40s, says a law enforcement official. That belief spurred investigators to not only expand their attempts to identify unidentified victims, re-examine dump sites, and conduct additional searches of Rex's home, but to also begin re-examining unsolved missing persons cases. Investigators are also looking at seemingly unrelated unsolved homicides where there may be similarities among the victims, the crime scenes, or the condition of the bodies, end quote. Alicia's loved ones still remain hopeful that justice will be served for her. Patrick speaks for the family when he says that though they want her killer to be caught, he hopes that they will never have to go through the trauma of a trial. He told the U.S. Sun that he has so many questions that he still wants answers to, specifically why Alicia was targeted, why she was killed, and if the murderer feels any remorse. He also said that he thinks he's forgiven them in many ways. Quote, I think you have to be a pretty disturbed person to do what they did, and my hope would be that they've found some peace, some kind of forgiveness, some kind of healing in their own lives. In a eulogy written by Alicia's Aunt Shirley at the memorial service, Shirley closed by saying, quote, we should not passively accept evil. We must name it and fight it, not with weapons and not by barricading ourselves behind locked doors and barbed wire. We fight evil by loving each other and educating each other, and even more by building relationships across boundaries that separate us in our communities. If we are going to honor Alicia in a country too full of violence, we have much work yet to do. In March of 2024, the Virginia State Police released a statement saying that they were still actively investigating the abduction and homicide of Alicia. They report having received more than 10,000 leads in the 28 years since she was murdered. If you have any information about the murder of Alicia Showalter Reynolds, please contact the Virginia State Police at 1-800-572-2260.
That's it for this week, but come hang out with us on social media. We're everywhere, Instagram, TikTok, even YouTube. If not, we'll see you same time, same place next week. Until then,
Stay safe.
bye.